Back once again, this is Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions, Blue Flame Healing Arts, and Occult Science. Now, I've been off here for a while. Actually, very focused on my own personal path work, my own healing, and moving through some very challenging but very beautiful circumstances that are taking place. Now, it's important to note that the last segment that was uploaded on Black Earth Productions, all about the power of speech, is where I want to move forward with things now. And taking it back to one of my foundational teachings, we must become the master of our own thoughts and emotions here in Midgard. I cannot stress how important this is, and actually how unbelievably difficult it can be for me personally, remembering how to master specifically my emotion. Emotion, see, is where we get our magic. And with the type of aura that I have, there are some very important things that I need to get into with all of you out there. If you have the ear to hear, the manipulation of the emotional body specifically is what we are dealing with at a core level. And getting into this art and science, it is very fucking important, especially for people of my disposition, to be working on this daily. You could be another teacher, you could be another one of our initiates, but this process is never going to end as long as you are alive here. There's a difference between the master and the apprentice. The difference is that the master knows how to apply not only the basic fundamentals when it comes to the universal laws of metaphysics and the eternal axioms. So when I gain insight, or when I get in the position to be able to see into what's really going on, I'm going to encourage people out there that may or may not always listen to what I have to say, making sure that every single day that you are actually focused. So in context to thought and emotion, what are you thinking about right now? What are you feeling right now? What are you focused on, really? It doesn't take a fucking genius to know that things in this reality field are pretty fucked up. Now, you can get really deep into the details of the overlay. But again, how are we navigating this? How are we treating ourselves? How are we treating one another? For real. Past all of the little idiosyncrasies and insecurities that unconsciously continue to project themselves. Because the wheel of everything that we're dealing with is still grinding. At the same time, waves of the higher force have been coming in within my own beingness, causing me to face things that at one time maybe I thought this wasn't such a big fucking deal. But it's very interesting when the power of the higher force comes in. Like I said, it's a very purging power, and it's going to route out everything that needs to be routed the fuck out. Now, some of you out there may have been watching the content that's been presented on Black Earth Productions for a while. If you've been thinking about being initiated into the Blue Flame Healing Arts and Occult Science, I'm definitely going to encourage that. Because I have mastered this to be in the position that I am in, even though I am right now being ripped and torn to fucking shreds. And it's like I've said, if you know how to make ritual out of what's actually going on, then you will be able to integrate and continue to evolve in trajectory with what's actually unfolding right now. Because for a lot of you out there, I know for a fucking fact, including myself, it feels like 20 steps backwards. And then the ironic thing, that people want to get into the art and science of astropsychology, there have been a numerous amount of retrogrades this year that have literally forced things to rise to the surface. Now, I'm specifically talking about with people that are doing the real work. And going back to what I've been talking about for a very, very long time now, healing is number one. Healing. Blue flame healing arts. True occult science in context of magic. And the magic that I practice is nothing to do with the left-wing or right-wing brotherhoods. All of those old systems are done. I've said it. It's been proven. It's been mathematically even proven. Now, what is actually effective on a little bit deeper level? I'm going to take it back to the protocol teaching. Even the most advanced teaching out there has to have the foundation of the universal laws of metaphysics and the eternal axioms. Nothing gets past this. Doesn't matter what you think you know about anything. Unless that foundation has been laid and the connection to what is beyond established, nothing is actually going to work. And I can see this proven in my own life and other people's lives as well when I wasn't focused. And you know what? I fucking am. And the reason why is because of the things that I know. Deep, 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 deep down, past it all, there is a great love and passion for truth. There's a great love and passion for healing. There's a great love and passion to see all of the grief and the sorrow and the shame and the guilt and the fear stripped the fuck away within the flames and the fire and the water. And this is why I do what I do, to not only encourage and empower myself, but to put that forth as an evocation. Now, the things I want to dive into do go back to some very interesting things. And there is something that I want to address here before I actually get started into what I want to be presenting. And it's a quote by Dr. Phil Valentine, who I actually had the distinct honor to be able to speak with recently, as he was laying out some things that needed to be addressed in context to a lot of the stuff that has happened over here on our end that I've been taking my time to focus on. And in his book, The Wounded Womb, he says, quote, "The mythos is not merely a fanciful dead-letter fairy tale of the pretend achievements of the ancestors. It is an allegorically encoded schematic hiding the metaphysical formula of science. When acted out through ritual and ceremony, myth teaches, regulates, heals, and transforms within the collective consciousness of the people that birthed it. And to enter into the mythical dimensions of existence through ritual is to enter into a time of primordial unity, a time where things were and are still in divine order. The true secrets therein all go back to the universal laws of metaphysics and the eternal axioms." Now, I have a schematic here I'm going to present forth right now. And at the very center is the universal womb itself. This literally shows what is there at the heart of Gunundagap. Now I'm going to take things back to the ancient tradition of my ancestors in context. But everything I'm going to get into on this segment is meant for everybody out there. It's not just given to my personal blood code ancestors. It is a major piece of the equation because all of humanity comes from the Great North. Throughout the ages, man has pondered the inner working of the mind and delved into the mysteries of the soul along with many other things. See, humankind also in part seeks to identify and codify the world around us based upon its perceptions of reality, and to place name and label on concepts that frame them in such a way that mortal minds can more effectively know the wonders of the nine worlds and even what is beyond. It is all here now and is just as present as it ever was. This process continues today as modern seekers of truth continue to reconstruct and continue to develop the ways of our ancestors, as I am, along with laying the foundation with the universal laws of metaphysics and the eternal axioms. With this, to move things forward in context to the new mythos that is meant to be created now. Also, while continuing to breathe life into this way of living and being here and now. Now, before I really start to dive into what is actually going on with the schematic, the formula and how I have laid things out in context to the original template can, in a very simple way, be exemplified and looked upon at surface with the art and science of numerology with the rune BFHAOS. It is all there for myself in context to what has been revealed to me. And see, the interesting thing about BFHAOS is that this represents Tyr, who is and is still the original Sky Father to Mother Earth in context to the ancient ancestors. Again, the mythos is encoded with the universal laws of metaphysics and as a science, along with the teaching of the eternal axioms. So long before Odin started to take his archetypal place among the ancient tribes, it was Tyr who was the original. And it's something that I've been working with specifically for quite a while now in context to BFHAOS. With BFHAOS, the 0 along with the 396 is all there on the points of this rune on the upverse, and is all in alignment. It's also interesting to note that BFHAOS even looks like the spearhead of a spindle itself. And when all of this flows correctly, that is when the gates to the inner temple are truly opened for the individual. And it's also important to note that we are at the spearhead of consciousness evolution here in Midgard. Now, if 0 is taken out of this equation, that is when everything becomes distorted. That is when the jaws of Fenrir collapse in on the spindle of the energy force itself, like it says in the mythos, when Fenrir goes to swallow the sun. And in context here to what I'm presenting, Tyr himself is a reflection of that soul spark that is there within our core essence. Even as I warned last year, we are in the process of facing Fenrir right now, going through all the transformations that are taking place in these moments. And that's why right now, the circle needs to be reinstated, coming back into alignment with our core essence, back into alignment with the higher force, back into alignment with the spindle of the energy force. Otherwise, it will be the same cycles that we have seen over and over again for the last 26,000 years. And so 0 in context here is a reflection of the strength of Tyr, holding back the devourment that would take place otherwise. When 0, which I term the circle of the magician, is taken out of the equation within the single digit code, when this happens, this is when the universal womb becomes sealed off and triangulated within the 396 with the 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. And see, nowhere in that equation is 0 even present. I've touched upon this many, many times on Black Earth Productions, and there's still a lot of old teaching out there that promulgates this as some kind of sacred knowledge, when in fact it's nothing more than the distortion itself. And with all of its machinations in context to how things become polarized within ourselves, I can look out and know why things are the way they are here in our reality field. Ragnarok is the alchemical process. And unless things are in alignment, without proper knowledge and wisdom, what do you think the end result is going to be? In examining the psychosomatic northern soul complex, one must first eliminate the illusion that the soul and the body comprise a dualistic system wherein each is separate from the other. And sifting through the records that still exist today, in conjunction with extrapolations of the fragments of ancient texts, one rapidly comes into the realization again that the ancients did not see mind, body, and soul as separate facets to the whole. Rather, it is with what I term the soul spark being that which gives life and motion to the body, is not inseparable from the rest. The mythos illustrates an allegory wherein part of the soul, in context to soul fragmentation, can exit the physical body and act independent of the physical form when the soul spark has been eclipsed from within the individual. And with this, the physical body will potentially lay lifeless in amnesic slumber while the soul aspect is away from the body and needs to be integrated again. Now, see, it cannot act independently without that aspect of the soul. The point illustrated here is that the soul actually has a defined codification and can end up being more complex than it actually needs to be when understood by mortals and their perception in context. In truth, the physical body and soul are intrinsically intertwined and are dependent on one another to make the entirety of life possible on the level that it's meant to be here. Without that soul spark, to take the life from a stone is the same as making it vanish into absolute nothingness. The physical body houses everything here in Midgard on a multi-dimensional level, and it becomes lifeless without this animating force. So in context, the soul is the physical body, and the physical body is the soul. And in light of this, and keeping this complex in mind, it is essential to know that the human brain seeks codification and systemization in alignment with the true core essence in which the soul is a part of, along with many other things that I'm going to get into with the schematic that I am presenting here. So to know and grasp these things and abstract concepts, we are going to be touching upon in context. The psychosomatic northern soul complex represents a concerted effort to build upon the pre-existing work of the ancestors in an effort to provide future generations with these concepts pertaining these things, and for those to whom it's meant. It's going to be very important for you as the viewer of this segment to pay very, very close attention to what I'm going to be sharing. The soul spark, which is the fire and flame of the primordial womb, is also illustrated in the Fool card of the tarot, which is card 0, taking it back to the circle of the magician. All of this here in this presentation needs to be looked upon as the central sun within yourself. All of this consists of a series of aspects and parts that can be roughly broken up into 4 main areas of influence with the individual. Of course, this is not a perfect fit, as the interconnected web of individuals here in Midgard have not had that soul spark ignited by the higher force, as we do in fact live in a world of multiplicity. This literally defines, though, the delineation and compartmentalization and triangulation we are all dealing with here. So for ease of this dissertation, it will be a major question of whether or not you are actually in alignment with the true core essence and the higher force. Otherwise, the system mechanics I present here are not going to be running correctly. My goal here, literally with everything I present, falls in line with the hope that you as the listener are making a serious effort to make this happen for yourself. And if you are, then all of this should make sense as I progress. So with this, I'm going to refer to the 5 primary areas of the psychosomatic northern soul complex as the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual bodies that need to be in alignment and trajectory in action with what's known as Orlog, which in other terms is the authentic path that one must be upon in order to come into alignment with true purpose and destiny here in Midgard. It's going to be vital for you to understand that this complex is used as simplification for the purpose of what's being presented here, and is encouraged to you as the viewer, that if you want to get deeper into these things and how it pertains to you personally, to actually be initiated into the blue flame healing arts and occult science, so that you can line out the proper foundation for this path work. Because all of this becomes highly unique to the individual into how you are meant to navigate the 3 spirals of creation and integrate the concepts being presented here, given over to your personal system mechanics getting into the art and sciences of know thyself. And when dealing with something as nebulous as breath itself, to claim some sort of certainty would be a contradiction of terms here in context, because everybody is unique. And each independent aspect of the complex is essential to know itself. For the engine of the soul spark to perform at its peak efficiency with all of us here in this reality field. And some parts, if broken or missing or not known, will eventually stop the engine of the soul spark from running altogether, as within as without, and will otherwise continue to be manipulated by forces that have worked to enslave mankind as a whole. So by better understanding the makeup of this engine within yourself, the driver can learn to use their own system mechanics to fix and heal areas that need maintenance if necessary. One particular issue we continue to run into in any effort to simplify the great sea of information we are fucking drowning in context to any sort of spiritual teaching out there. Again, what we need to be seeking is proper knowledge and wisdom. And the psychosomatic northern soul complex has reached its form of agreement regarding the specific soul parts included here with this schematic. The ancient ancestors seem to have a varied and inconsistent view of these things. But this all goes back to the fragmentation of consciousness itself. And see, upon personal investigation with this myself, it seems the ancient ancestors did, in fact, have some coinciding ideas regarding everything I'm going to be presenting here. Most did not appear to have developed a singular system, but this is something I'm going to be attempting to present where it can be explained and known. Now, with all this, the very first thing I want to get into are the mental and emotional bodies. Perhaps they're the easiest to begin with, since I think most of my hearing audience, as well as our initiates, know how important this is when it comes to starting the process of becoming the master of them, and knowing how they actually operate with you as the individual. And as you start to explore within yourself the complex I'm presenting here, when it comes to the mental and emotional portion of this schematic, we can look upon the center where the primordial womb is projected in reflection. And when it comes to the system mechanics of thought and memory, when it comes to the system mechanics of intellect and intelligence, when it comes to the system mechanics of emotion itself, the term I'm going to use here in context to the mythos is called the mind. These are the projection and reflection of Odin's crows, Hugin and Munin. And when it comes to the symbolism of the mythos, Odin was able to peer into all of the 9 worlds of Yggdrasil. So with Hugin and Munin representing thought and memory, we are here in Midgard able to peer into all of the 9 worlds, and even what is beyond the 9 worlds of Yggdrasil. It is a major question of the extent we are able to tap into when we are experiencing activations from within the true core essence of who we are when things are in alignment here, which is what the mental and emotional bodies need to come into alignment with in context to the true core essence and the higher force. So when it comes to thought, thought is operating mostly in the left hemisphere of the brain field, and it's to do with the intellectual capacity to take images and to know them, because the world is ruled by symbols. And so with this, symbolism is 101 when it comes to unpacking true occult proper knowledge and wisdom, and also when it comes to memory. And so then when it comes to memory, this is much to do with the artistic archetypal imagery that is found within the core of one's own beingness. There are many things I can get into when it comes to the brain field, but to stay focused in context to this dissertation, the term here used by the ancients, again, is mind. It's also important to know that thought and emotion are not the true mind itself. Thought and emotion are mind. Mind, this is something much deeper, even beyond the complex we are exploring right now. But these are the aspects that encompass the capacities for thought and memory to exist within ourselves. Thought and memory, again, as I've said before, act like a radar, potentially for the intellect to process true hardcore intelligence. And then there's emotion. And emotion, again, is where we get our true magic. This is the true function of emotion. And it's also important to note, again, how this is being manipulated and used against us on a daily basis. And it's why we must pursue the quest of being the master of our own thoughts and emotions here in Midgard. So the mind also encompasses two smaller parts of itself called the Urthak and the Gemein, which is the center of personal memories, deeds, knowledge, and potential wisdom acquired throughout an individual's life, and can also be tapped into on a deeper level in context to the ancestors via our blood codes and soul code genetics. It is the aspect of the complex that brings forth knowledge and wisdom from the deeds and experiences in our history. And even as Carl Jung said, our true history is not found in books, but it is found within the blood itself. With this, I will also say we can tap into the ancient future, since past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously. Furthermore, the Urthak is the portion of the mind that brings an individual to their ancestral memories, the individual's inborn thoughts and natural instinct that are all potentially meant to come into alignment. This by some has been referred to as the tribal mind. Now with this, it's not to neglect the individual into some kind of hive mind bullshit. It's more to do with knowing what position one would take within the tribe and its overall function in our reality field. Of course, there can be many things that a person is capable of. As far as I'm concerned, though, this is what has been lost in society, given over to a pseudo version of all of this, on the inverse, making individuals slave to the matrix systems of domination and control. I personally have very, very strong tribal codes, so for me getting into all this, it has confirmed a lot in context to what has been revealed to me with my personal activations and memories coming back as far as what my position is. So with this portion of the complex, it seems to be tied to the tribal orlog as well, which makes sense to me since the original blood codes of the original races started to be activated again in 2017 and will continue going into 2025, linking individuals into the true memories and experiences of their kin in context to the ancient ancestors, along with all other aspects of the spirals of creation, the solar spiral, the galactic, and eventually the universal. As we are all here to catch up to soul cycles, getting things back on track with the original timeline. But there's still much healing that needs to take place, and becoming the master of your thought and emotion in alignment with the mind is something that we are all going to continue to be doing for the rest of our lives here. It has proven to be a major challenge, like I've said, for many, since most don't even consider the fact that these are the things that those in the positions of domination and control do not want us to access with the mind itself. Getting into all of this, it has made things make a lot more sense with everything. Okay, next, what I want to get into is called the Hijj. This is the aspect of the complex that specifically deals with the realm of thoughts. Both the mind and the Hijj work together in correlation with everything I'm getting into with the mental and emotional bodies. Again, this is everything to do with Hugin and Munin. The Hijj, though, here, and its specific portion of the complex, can be further broken down into three working aspects. The first one is called the Anget. and is basically the information gathering center of the complex. The second aspect is called the Cepha, which is the center of thought and reasoning, and the third, which is the wit, serves the purpose of active memory retrieval, true memory. The Angat is the portion of the complex that seems to be primarily responsible for gathering and sorting information and wisdom from Midgard itself. And if people don't know what I mean when I say Midgard, Midgard is our reality field here on Earth, and is also everything to do with the physical universe itself. See, there are many worlds and universes, so when I say Midgard, I want those that are hearing this to know what I mean from here on out. So again, with the Angat, this equates to the sensation and perception functions recognized by psychology. Herein, you could say this is to do with raw information as it is brought into the brain and directed to the appropriate cortical structures for processing. The Angat gathers knowledge and wisdom, and it processes the information, assigning its value to the individual before it starts to pass it along to the other parts of the complex. Next, touching upon the Cepha, this is the seat of reasoning and is the portion of the complex that deals with what we would equate to the higher brain functions found in the forebrain. This is where much of our actual consciousness and alignment takes place, as the Cepha utilizes information gathered by the Angat to make decisions in an active manner, taking action. The third aspect of the Hij, again, is the wit. This portion of the complex is responsible for active memory retrieval, whereas the Urathak houses the memories of the individual and the tribe. Going back to things with the mind, it is the duty of wit to carry memory to the Cepha and to be used in conjunction with the information provided by the Angat. Thus, the Hij therefore makes up the portion also working in trajectory with the mind and is frequently equated as the ever logical left side of the brain. Okay, now next, what I want to get into is known as the Wode. Now with this, I'm going to be touching upon aspects of the Wode that work together to form the true counterbalance when it comes to the Hij and the mind. And it is the position of the Wode itself that arises from within the individual so that things with the Hij and mind are not taken the fuck over with all the bullshit that's going on in this reality field. I want everyone to pay close attention to what I'm about to get into here, because it is this portion of the complex that potentially brings the individual into a place of being whole-brained in alignment with the core essence, and is the gate to the primordial womb itself. And seeing context to this, it really is a serious issue with most in the case of being polarized within themselves who are under the spell of mind control. But to get deeper into this now, do you ever notice in life where you come into a very profound experience, and is that was something that takes place, and then you say to yourself, whoa. See, when this happens, I will say it's the Wode being activated within the individual. And it can happen in context with many things that take place that I'm getting at here that are beyond convention, which in most cases it is when it actually happens. See, this is the magical aspect of the individual that evokes ecstatic inspiration, enthusiasm, and all of that which entails a very real sort of divine inspiration. Now, in context to Seth and Galder, this is everything to do with a true shamanic inspired state of mind, which is also able to communicate with the archetypes of consciousness, which most only know commonly in terms of the gods and goddesses. But even deeper, it not only gives one the ability to communicate with the ancestors, given access to blood code and soul code genetics, but more than with anything else, with what I term the higher force, which is Creator Source itself. Other aspects of the Wode can also give one the ability to bring into manifestation the strength and the power of the Berserker and the Ulfednar. This is also to do with knowing how to tap into the soul of the earth itself, making connection to what I've mentioned in context to the planetary Templar, burning and healing past all of the layers of the distortion fields. It also gives one the ability to tap into other grid works of consciousness that are beyond the distortions. And so to navigate, again, all three spirals of creation is what we are working in trajectory with here. Now, the woad itself is made up of, first, the mod, which is in other terms the inner moderator, and also the will. In context here, to the higher will of creation itself in alignment with the true core essence. See, this is the true will of the individual, not the lower will that's been circumvented by the spellcast of mind control. It's the mod within the woad which governs within the individual all emotions within the human spectrums of reality. Again, as I've mentioned, and as I will continue to mention, emotion is where we get our true magic. Otherwise, again, can be manipulated against us with the overlay when it comes to the emotional body specifically. The woad is also linked to the qualities of being bold in the face of fear and cultivating a true sense of self-respect, dignity, and honor, which are things that need to be reinstated in this fucked up reality field that we live in, goddammit. And it's this area of the complex which processes emotions in alignment with thought, with the woad, and when all three are working correctly, connect us to the primordial womb itself. This can be influenced by sensations and hormones secreted that manifest in the physical body as well. You could say this has been described by some as the metaphorical heart of the individual, or what I term heart core intelligence. This is where the strength of character comes, with many heroes in times past that exhibit this raw consciousness in their exploits when it's been said that they are bold again in the face of fear. Now, psychologically speaking, the woad ties heavily into the limbic system within the brain, which is the neurological center of emotion. However, the woad is more difficult to explain because it's not the only thing that's going on here. Woad is the portion of the complex that reigns over ecstasy. It reigns over true proper knowledge and wisdom. It reigns over inspiration. And also given over to an extreme when things are not in alignment, this can lead an individual into madness. This is something else that I need to touch upon as well, because I have experienced this in context to true shamanic initiation, where the mind and the Hidge are going through the process of integration of higher consciousness in connection to the higher force. Now, of course, with true initiation, this is not a permanent state of mind where eventually one will make connection. But it's something that some individuals must go through in order to make connection with the higher force and the true core essence. Many people have described this portion of the complex as the domain of Odin, Wotan, which is where we get the term woad itself. So to come into the woad, to come into the woe, is to embrace all aspects of reality as they are, standing there present at the gates of the primordial womb. Now, archetypally speaking here, it is through the woad, the inspiration of poets, artists, musicians, warriors, and many other that truly tap into the creative capacity within themselves here in Midgard, find words and expressions in proper knowledge and wisdom bursting forth within the entire mind itself. It's like when a musician can lose themselves, so to speak. And I remember doing this myself when I was going through that time in my life. And as the music flows through them, and as the music flowed through me, it was the woad that was activating. Now see, again, this is the same thing that happens when the Berserkers and the Ulfednar can find themselves lost in a divine rage. divine rage, not unbridled rage, not unjustified rage, divine rage. And it's also akin to certain athletes that seem to be able to enter the zone, as some examples of what I'm getting at here. But this can really come to anything in life. Again, this is the birth center of creativity within the complex. This is the birth center of life within the complex. This is the birth center of that pure, raw sexual energy that's in alignment and is pure in its expression. And it seems to well up out of nowhere in an active fashion when it's activated within the individual. And it's the avenue of obtaining divine passion, where the gifts of creativity and inspiration are imparted. You could also equate this to the higher self from a certain point of view. But the divine aspect of the personality that persists throughout a person's life is found in the Wode, and is independent of the overt changes that seem to occur in a person's personality throughout their lifetime. This most closely ties the Wode as the center, making connection to divine passion and inspiration. The Wode contains a sense of self that is ever pervasive and influences a person's development throughout their lifespan. However, going back to the different portions of the Wode, again, the first one being the mod and the other being the will, it is the will that allows mortals to control the flowing power of the Wode, allowing an individual to give expression to this divine inspiration. Will is that self-determination and control that comes from within the individual, allowing them to manage their emotions with the mod and utilize the thoughts and emotions of the Hij and the mind. Now see, all together as it's working in flow and in alignment, this is where the true will of the individual is found. And to guide the passion of the Wode into form, either into something very beautiful, and it could also be very terrifying to some that in most cases for them are disassociated with any aspect of this within themselves. Now, one thing I want to touch upon here are other discussions that have taken place in context of situations where an individual becomes a channeler, where most unwitting individuals see this as something that is coming through an individual from another source. And in this case, as far as I'm concerned, it's likely that the Wode itself is being manipulated to serve as the conduit through which this disassociation occurs, allowing another entity's will to communicate through or influence the individual, versus things coming forth from the true core essence of the individual. Now see, this is very fucking important to note here. And it's the latter that's the real, not the manipulation thereof. And if people don't know the real game that's been taking place in context to disembodied spirits and whatever the fuck else is out there, then they can easily be swayed into thinking that they, with their own eternal spirit, do not have the capacity that some of these spirits do in the case of channeling through individuals, and are basically being used as their meat puppets here in Midgard. This is even in the case of the gods and goddesses. And the truth, when it comes to them, we are never to bow down. This is where all the distortions came in context to the dark gods stealing the archetypes of the ancestors given over to the dark priesthoods. I've touched upon this fact many, many, many times on Black Earth Productions. And I need you to hear what the fuck I'm saying here. And to know the difference with all this is to know thyself. And then, only then, will you know the universe, what the gods and goddesses truly are, let alone what I term creator source. Together, though, with everything in context to the Wode, again, it is the function of creative capacity, the mindful right brain, in contrast to the thoughtful left brain, and brings one into being whole brains, and brings one into alignment with the true core essence and the eternal spirit of the individual. So the next time you experience woad, pay attention, because it's in those moments, in those aha moments, that your true eternal essence is being activated. And it is the position of the Hijj and the mind to come into alignment so that the gates to the primordial womb can be opened once again to the individual, so that we can heal, so that we can flow, so that we can remember, so that we can come into alignment and actually start creating what we are truly here to create. We did not incarnate to be slaves. We incarnated so that we may remember to become the master of ourselves and the master of our destiny here in Midgard. That's the whole point. And so with the woad, that is probably one of my most favorite portions of the complex itself. And so I think right here is a very good time to take a break with this segment. And with the song being presented as an example of what I've been speaking upon in context to the woad, that was inspired by one of our initiates. His name is Rodney Goodwin. He tapped into his fire letter codex and started to express and create, taking the magic that is there within him and forming this opus. So take some time to meditate and to ponder upon the things I've been speaking upon while listening to this. This is Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions. I'll be right back after the break. back from the break, everyone. And again, that was Rodney Goodwin with his Fire Letter Codex. Now, everything I've been getting into with this segment is to do with the psychosomatic northern soul complex. Another term I really like to use for this is the egg of the white dragon. For I myself hail from the white dragon lineage. Hopefully everything that I've gotten into so far has resonated with you in some way on a deeper level in context to the system mechanics that we are working with here. We just got into the mind, the hidge, and the woad. And to probe even further into things, another thing to recognize is the impact that fractured or damaged aspects of the psychosomatic northern soul complex may have on the well-being and function of the individual. See, all of us have damage here in this reality field in many areas, and there's no real way of escaping it. And I can also confirm, which I have with other master teachers in this esoteric field of practice, that it really is, once again, all about your state of mind, and that the root issues therein are the cause point for everything else that potentially manifests within the individual, either for good or for ill. It all goes back to these roots. And it's not to overextend getting too much into things with that again on here, with all the problems and the stuff that we're facing. If you don't know the cosmic law of alchemy, that's something that you're going to need to study, which has also been presented here on Black Earth Productions. And so going into all the ways that this can happen in context to the well-being of the individual, I'm here to focus on solution. And with the complex that is being presented here is yet another map we can explore and navigate within ourselves in order to be able to catch when certain things are taking place within ourselves as well with others, knowing the difference. And knowing the difference is to recognize this, giving ourselves some room to move through things as well as others when necessary. And see, certain things need to be known on a deeper level with the psyche. It has been postulated that certain psychological disorders may in fact be manifestations of damaged parts of the complex. Okay, but why? What was the cause point for such damage to take place? And see, with that, it all goes back to the true root of the issue, not the damage that manifests in such cases. We need to stop treating symptoms and start getting to the root of all issues here in Midgard, so that things like clinical depression or extreme dissociative identity disorder can truly be dealt with in the ways that they need to be. And my take on these things as a professional transformational psychologist, I know for a fact, in truth, that there is nothing that cannot be healed through if the person is willing to take the quest. And while a potential complete soul loss could and does happen with individuals, it's to recognize again even more why these arts and sciences are necessary in terms of education when it comes to proper knowledge and wisdom. Otherwise, the world and future generations are going to end up in the same amnesic state of mind that's no better than a fucking coma that comes upon the individual that does not want to get well. And see, that's the thing. Again, individuals given over to willful ignorance and apathy to truth once it's presented itself. And that's one of the ultimate questions that needs to be addressed. Do you want to heal? Do you really want to heal? And see, if you do, and are even in the process of this, then please continue to hear what is being presented here. See, some of the theories that are out there that have been presented by alleged experts are going to bear further examination as the current medical paradigms used to diagnose and treat conditions fail to take the complex into consideration, let alone the universal laws of metaphysics and the eternal axioms. And within the world of psychology, there exists the practice of religious counseling even when it comes to a lot of the modalities that are being promulgated by the New Age propagates, which to date is still not effective enough in context to what we are actually dealing with here. And see, I've worked in both the world of secular psychology and the ministry, and also seen how ineffective a lot of the New Age bullshit is out there, having spoken with many of our initiates and students that have been directly involved themselves with that. Some have even been at the forefront, realizing that there's a lot more taking place than they even realized. And that's why study of the occult, true, proper knowledge and wisdom is going to be necessary to unearth what it is that I think individuals are starting to really recognize. See, this is far different than some sort of bullshit spiritual counseling that gets people into the practice of spiritual escapism, when what needs to be offered to individuals here that truly want to heal, to know thyself, is the pathwork of spiritual self-mastery. So before leaving the mental and emotional areas of the complex, it bears mentioning that there are many differing opinions and theories out there when it comes to all of these things. As far as I'm concerned, though, based upon direct experience and how things are laid out here, I've come to terms with all of this in context to how things actually work. And everything I've shared so far here with the complex is one of the most accurate, if not the most detailed schematics out there when it comes to the system mechanics of thought and emotion. We can see how they're supposed to work when they're in alignment with the WOD. And when all three are in alignment, again, it will potentially give one access to the primordial womb itself. But see, that's not all that's going on here. There's a lot more I'm about to dive into, so get ready. And the goal here so far, before getting into everything else, is to see it as a whole instead of simply in its parts. Now, with everything I'm going to move into next, this is going to get into more of the deeper spiritual aspects of the complex. The first of these to address is called the hide. The hide can be best described as an energy-based skin that contains the non-physical aspects of the complex. This equates to what we all know as the spirit of the individual. The hide serves as a protective outer binding morphogenetic field for the spirit to soul code template to wrap itself within the essence of the soul spark, and from there within the heart core intelligence itself. This is when the magic of creation begins to express itself into physical form. It is the means by which the spirit to soul code templates can express itself to the outside world in a willful manner. Essentially, the hide serves to give form and shape to the pure power of the will. Again, though, in context, it is to note to pose the question as to whether or not the will of the individual is in alignment with the true core essence, and the rest of what has and is going to be presented here. The hide, in other terms, is the eternal spirit itself, because as we all know, the will is something that has been highly targeted here in Midgard in order to siphon and circumvent the soul spark essence and will of the individual, manipulating the collective into a hive-mind slave state of mind, which in turn cuts off the individual from their true roots, which then keeps the mind and the hidge polarized against itself within one's own being on an unconscious level. It's also important to note that having a weak hide could potentially lead an individual to appear witless, even though they may seem to function well within the constructs of the overlay that has built itself around us here in this reality field. And though we can all deal with this from time to time, this is something that's a constant with the individual if this has actually happened. Because once truth has presented itself and the individual falls into the place of willful ignorance and apathy, this is what has happened in context to what I'm talking about, with the hide being weakened. Now further, it's also to note that an individual may very well be an actual genius, right? and have a very, very strong spirit within the hide. But again, if the hide has become weak, considering all the ways that this can happen to a person, it can prevent them from authentically, fully expressing themselves in alignment, which is why having a very strong hide is absolutely necessary when it comes to this path work. The visual appearance of the hide generally mirrors the physical appearance of the body to which it belongs. And it is said that this is part of the etheric aspect with which, to what I term the spirit to soul code template, is also there within the hide, connected to the hinge and the mind when it comes to the mental and emotional body specifically, and are the makeup of the etheric body itself. Getting into some lore now. It has been said that certain powerful shamans and rune workers, among many other things in context, are able to shift and shape their hide into that of animals and other forms. Now, I know this can be a far stretch for the imagination. So to make it more simple for those that may have a hard time knowing how this actually works, I'm going to equate what I'm speaking about in context to animal totems that have appeared to the individual, whether in a waking lucid vision, a dream state, or in physical form. See, I have many totems that have appeared to me in all of these ways, and I do work with them. And as far as I'm concerned, the animals themselves are actual extensions of human consciousness here in Midgard. It is also said that the hide can be used as a ship in order to travel in a manner many would liken to the modern concept of astral projection. And though I personally do not condone such practice because of what's actually going on in the astral, people do practice this shit. All of that aside, though, to stay on track, it is with the same technique and context taken to another level with what I actually personally practice. Because there is far, far more beyond the astral. And I've traveled into realms of consciousness and worlds and universes that I can't even fully put into words with the common tongue when it comes to a lot of the things I've seen and experienced in just this lifetime. Of course, this is subjective with myself. It's not to say that most are even going to be able to travel at the drop of a hat, as it is in the case of advanced practitioners. But for those that think that this is the only reality field that exists, I'm here to say that it's not, knowing what I know and experience. Yet, at the same time, what we are actually experiencing when this happens, it's all happening here. And it's as I've said, until individuals realize that all is within, our perceptions are going to continue to be pulled on and manipulated by the lower astral grid works of consciousness with all this shit. That is why one must know what's really going on before proceeding with this specifically. Because a lot was and has been set in place to circumvent the real. And to get access to the real, one must first tap into the hide itself, which will put the individual in alignment with that which is far, far beyond any of the bullshit. So in practice, when I do this, when I do the real, the hide is then willfully sent out from the physical body, carrying what's known as the firth with it. Now the firth, in context here, is a break in the space-time continuum, where one can create portals within themselves in order to travel. Now, if this is not done correctly, it will damage the hide and disturb the natural order of things. That's why it can be highly dangerous for those that have not been initiated to know the difference, also to know thyself with what's actually going on. And see, with this level of integration, this is something that I can only advocate for those that are highly advanced practitioners, having first become the masters of themselves and having gone through the actual healing process on a very, very personal level in context, making connection with the hide. Otherwise, the hide can be hijacked within the lower astral and all the shit that is going on there, where people are literally treading off their eternal essence for something else to ride in on their consciousness. I do not practice the invocation of spirits. Here again, this is all about working with your own eternal spirit. And see, if you're not doing this, and they're doing the latter, this potentially is going to completely circumvent the hide. And without making connection to the true core essence and the higher force itself first, I'm going to encourage you not to engage. Now, when someone travels timelines and worlds of consciousness, it's important to know the difference between true portals versus wormholes. See, wormholes are artificial constructs that I could equate to certain host fields within the lower astral grid works. And damage to the physical body or the hide, while separated, being sucked into a wormhole, will inevitably result in the injury of the hide and possibly even physical death of the individual in question if they do not know what they are doing with all this. So in order to travel worlds of consciousness, in order to travel grid works that are beyond the lower astral, one must learn how to create portals within themselves in connection with the hide. Now, taking things back from all of this now, the hide grows along with the physical body during an infant's time in the womb. And see, in context to the complex that's being presented here, again, at the very center is the primordial womb itself. And see, when it comes to the hide and the physical body, the two are so dependent on one another that it's only logical that they would develop in tandem, and that any weakness in the hide is going to lead to defects. When it comes to the hide, though, which again is the spirit of the individual in any case, this is what needs to be tapped into, coming into alignment with the true core essence, and thus built upon igniting the soul spark of the individual in connection with the higher force, and made very, very strong in order for things to flow correctly with the complex, as well as the other things that I've mentioned here with it. Otherwise, it will lead someone into being soulless, let alone a spiritless husk. The other spiritual aspect that connects to the hide is called the atom. The atom is the breath of life, frequently visualized as a cord between the hide and the body. This connection serves as the animating force of the physical body itself. And if severed, the hide would be left adrift and would likely dissipate into its core elements, again leaving the body a lifeless husk. See, now there's much to say about the breath of life, and it's in between the in-breath and out-breath that the higher force is present. It's also why doing breathing exercises such as Qigong will strengthen the atom and thus give more power and strength to the hide itself. It's also interesting to note that many individuals out there are not breathing correctly, usually with a short intake into the upper lungs. Doing deep breaths and taking time to just breathe can release a lot of things that would damage the hide otherwise. In today's world, stress and anxiety are a lot of what individuals deal with. I myself included with that. But getting into the atom now, it is serving us to remind us to just breathe. Breathe when we are facing challenges, and to reflect upon how far you've actually come in life. And if you are listening to this and are still breathing, then right now I'm going to encourage you to breathe in that breath of life, to breathe in the atom, and realize that life is not over, and to reflect upon how far you have actually come and how much healing has and is still taking place. See, the atom itself, the breath of life, is a gift of the higher force, and how often we can take the atom for granted, when here we need to be working to be grateful for this gift we have been given, and is there to assist us in strengthening our spirit to soul-code essence within the hide. So with this right now, as you are listening, start to take in some deep breaths and begin to visualize within yourself all of the things that would bring you into a place of true empowerment and healing within yourself. Holding that into your focus, all of the creative abilities that are there to access, which are there to express themselves from within you. And see to focus on how All of this is meant to streamline if the atom is charged to precision within the circle. The breath of life can also be a very powerful weapon in the face of fear, or really anything else that would seek to take life and all that is good away from the individual. And see, the idea with this, as the animating force, the atom continues to fuel all of our bodies here on a multi-dimensional level, despite the larger portions here with the complex. There's some reasons to know that some portions of the firth remain accessible here within the breath, within the atom. And with the breath of life itself, the firth is able to be activated. Again, though, one must know what they are doing in context with the firth. And when individuals are ready, they will be granted their true memories and temperament of the true core essence, as it slowly works to integrate itself from within the individual with the hide and the atom. It's also been said and proven that in working to master the atom, in working to master breath itself, it will lead to a life-aged, allotted lifespan for the individual. Again, the atom begins with its connection to the hide. This is where the breath of life essentially comes from, which in truth is beyond physical reality to begin with, and then moves into the atom and the physical form. We exist in such an amazing creation despite all the bullshit that's going on. And if we work to capture and remember these things, the body, through the atom, is the full storehouse of life force energy, which is there to sustain us in connection with the hide. And in truth is already in connection to eternity itself. And going further into this now, healthy life choices will also lead the individual to gain the full span of their atom. And of course, unhealthy habits can spin this energy to the point that the overall lifespan is shortened. And I think all of us, including myself, can be much more healthy in life. And it's something that I'm currently working on myself, allowing myself to be held accountable to my inner circle and putting myself in the position to be corrected when necessary. See, accountability is very important as far as I'm concerned when it comes to this path work, because the only way that any of this is going to work on the level that it's meant to is if we have that true support with those around us. It's also to say, going back into these things before I move forward, the atom begins with Ond, which in terms is the first breath of spirit that entered into the body. From here, the firth, again, is the portion of the hide which can be regarded as the prima tree within one's own beingness, which I will say in context is everything to do with learning how to access the true universal tree of life, knowing how to wield the firth correctly. This aspect of the complex with the hide and atom allows for some of the pure, raw, and fallible consciousness to flow through the individual. It sharpens the instinct and provides a conduit with which humans can connect to the Vatir, who are in fact the Alpha themselves. Okay, next. The aspect of the complex I want to get into now is called the fetch, which I will say in fact is part of one's being that accompanies the individual's complex throughout their lives. Though some would argue that this is separate and differs from other aspects of the complex, in truth, you could say that this is the inner guide, bearing witness to the individual's deeds and personal timeline here in Midgard. The fetch is the access point within the individual, and could be equated with what people have called the higher self. With this, though, in context to the mythos, this is everything to do with the norns and the spindle of the energy force itself. I've mentioned the norns before, Udur, Ranandi, and Skuld, who represent past, present, and future, which again are all happening simultaneously. This is very, very important to know and to understand within yourself. The past, present, and future are all happening now. Udur, Ranandi, and Skuld are in the position to literally weave what we intend as individuals. And whether we are conscious of what we are weaving or not, the Norns themselves told me in a vision, after activations that took place with my blood codes, that they want individuals to get control of their individual spindles again. And see, this is not just for me and my blood. This is for all of humanity. As they sat there at the Well of Ord and were weeping as they told me this. Now, in context to everything, I'm going to share a quick story with you about a man that once came to me, hailing me in the middle of a field back in the year 2003. And as he walked up to me and began to speak to me, he told me that there was a great deal of knowledge and wisdom that was going to be unearthed in the coming years. Now, when I was listening to him speak with me, you need to know, everybody, that I thought this guy was absolutely fucking crazy. This was a few years after I had already been through my first shamanic initiation back in the year 2000 and made that connection with the higher force, which I term creator source. And see, this can happen with an individual even if they are still layered the fuck over. And how it was with me before I started moving through all of the overlay, going through all the things that I have leading up to the present moment. At the time, I was not aware of the things I am now. And as he stood there face to face with me, we spoke for quite a while. And I can say now, knowing what I know, that he was not wrong. And as we were about to part the conversation, seeing that I had to leave, he looked at me and said, "Weep as to be wept." Once you come into the knowledge of what this means, you will be in the position that you are meant to be in. Now listen, this is fucking crazy. We were literally in the middle of a field, right? And as I started to walk away towards leaving, by the time there was no one else around, I looked back to where we were standing and speaking to one another. He literally vanished into thin air. I looked all around me, and the woad hit me on a major fucking level. Because for him to vanish like that out of thin air is literally fucking impossible. People want to try and convince me otherwise when it comes to what has been revealed, the art and science of all of this and what it actually means is real. There have been too many confirmations for even myself to fall back into denial. Getting into all of this with you, doing this segment, there was a fire there within the Well of Ord, within all of us. And that too is a reflection of the primordial womb, where the fire and the water meet in order for life to spring forth. Now, back then, I had no idea the journey that was still ahead of me. That is something I will never in my entire life forget in context to what's unfolding. And through all the trials of my life and what I've come to know now, what he was speaking about was the Norns. And again, I saw them in a vision, like I was saying, weeping for what they were weaving. And in the vision, again, they said to me, you need to show individuals that are willing how to master this. And as I go into this even deeper, realizing that all is within. The energy force is something that the Dark Ones have known about for a very, very long time and have tricked mankind into weaving what they have intended for us. See, this is the difference with this path work. This is not about spiritual escapism. This is about spiritual self-mastery and know thyself, coming into alignment. This is what the Norns confirmed for me when they appeared to me in their archetypal form. And as they wept and pleaded, saying to me, again, tell them the secrets of the spindle. And remember to stay focused on what is meant to unfold. And with that, with all of you, I'm here to give it back to you and for those to whom it's meant. This is what the fetch is, everybody. And the fetch also serves the purpose of recording in the Well of Weird, both deeds of good and ill and all that is in between. Now I will admit that I have not been perfect in this life, and I've fucked up many times, although I am working very, very hard to keep things in trajectory with everything I know my true heart is. And there's no one on the face of the earth that can stand there and say what has been woven in their lives has necessarily been what they wanted to intend. And with what we are dealing with in context to the overlay and the distortion fields that we are all burning through still. On top of the fact that this knowledge is not very well known, especially in the past when we didn't know the difference with what was really going on, let alone coming into the knowledge and secrets of the universe and into that which is beyond, knowing how to work with everything correctly. And see, once again, this goes back to the unconscious manipulation. That's why healing is number one. To know the difference with what we are intending. Because if we are intending from our woundedness, if we are intending from fear, see, this is exactly where the dark gods want us. Where the dark ones, along with the dark gods, have wanted us. Now, is this honestly what you are choosing? Because listen, the manipulation that is happening on the level that it is, hitting us from all fucking sides of the equation, I think it would be best right now if we gave ourselves and other people that know the difference a little bit more fucking grace. Because being on the front line of this fucking war has been very fucking difficult. This is why the Norns weep. And so what we need to be intending should be coming from that place of peace and calm, being empowered from within the fulcrum in alignment with our core essence. And getting there to that place requires time. And sometimes for things to be put on hold while we are going through the process of healing. And see, with this, we need to be like cosmic motherfucking ninjas, where they don't see us coming, and not every action we take needs to be put out there into public fucking view. The things that need to be put out there in public view are different trajectories and navigation points where we can launch things forward, pulling ourselves out of the fucking wheel. See, a lot of people, they're just throwing shit out there every day, on and on and on and on it goes, within the thralls of the fucking wheel, within the thralls of the fucking madness. The world is being manipulated, where you're more surprised and in awe of all the bullshit instead of being in awe of what is there within your true core essence, focused on the higher force, and at the same time knowing the difference with everything else, observing what is unfolding in our reality field, and then taking action towards what is meant to unfold. Yes, know thy enemy, but even more, know thyself. And if you know thyself and know thy enemy, then you need not fear shit. This is what one of the greatest war generals of all time said. Instead of allowing yourself to be distracted, being pulled out of the fulcrum. And the fulcrum of the circle of the magician is where we need to be spending time every single day. Focused in trajectory so that we can come back into alignment and take the next steps forward. I know for myself lately that I've been going deeper into all of this with my personal path work, like I was saying at the start of the segment. Realizing as well as it has been confirmed that there have been many attacks sent against me in my inner circle, working to offset what is meant to unfold, which is typical considering what is meant to happen. And see, with all that, it has been bound, it has been banished, reflecting back 100 times, being sent back to those that sent forth those projections. See, I'm not fucking around over here. I have my life, and anything and anyone that comes to try and fuck with that is going to have something else coming to them. I'm not going to allow any sort of manipulation. I'm not going to allow any sort of distraction. I'm not going to allow any sort of seduction to enter into my field, taking me away from what I know within myself, with me in my inner circle. And with this shield right now, as I am evoking this, so that it surrounds us and protects us as we are taking time to focus on our own healing and progression and empowerment right now. This is something that everybody out there hearing my voice needs to know. I've come too far in my fucking life. And being in the position that I am in, I am held accountable. That's the only way that this is going to work. And so to take things I'm getting at here even further, the fetch is also to do with ancestral blood codes and soul codes. And it is to focus to heal also the ancestors from within, so that we don't make the same mistakes that they did, and to break the wheel and cycles of devourment within the triangulation, taking it back, like with what I was getting into with the rune Tiawas, coming into the place that we are meant in order to create the new mythos. Again, all of this is an art and science that needs to be reinstated. And so if you don't know what is meant to happen, if you don't fully know who you are and what you are here to do, or what you are fully capable of, again, we are on a journey. And the quest for healing is number one before everything can fully manifest in ways that have never been done before. And by going through the alchemical process, by being a partaker of the biospiritual regenesis, this is how we are going to win this war on consciousness. This is where we are going to flip the script once the codes are activated from within us, pulling everything into alignment. As above, so below, as within, as without. And the norns themselves, again, showed me to not act on woundedness and fear, but work to unweave those things upon the weird, and to weave again with the spindle that which empowers, that which brings peace, that which brings healing, that which brings abundance, that which brings creativity, that which brings joy, that which brings a sense of calm within the surrounding chaos that is going on in this world. This is where we become the cause point. And in that place, when you are truly in alignment, evil cannot harm you. Given over to evocation and declaration, along with using the fire letter codex, which is divine language, setting forth that which is in alignment with my divine counterpart, the universe, the universal tree of life. The fetch is the access point here within the complex. This is what the fetch is. And to wield the spindle of the energy force correctly is to know how to wield true magic the correct way here in Midgard. Okay, moving into what I'm getting into next. I'm going to now touch upon the physical aspects of the complex, as I did with the mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies, which are all held within the physical vessel of the individual and all intertwined at the same time. The eternal spirits of the individual and the physical body are intimately tied to one another, and one cannot exist without the other here in Midgard, along with every other body that has been mentioned in this segment on a multidimensional level. And in the ancient tales, the physical body is referred to as the like. And it's the like which is the expression of the spirit to soul code essence of the individual, which can be formed and shaped by the human will itself. The like is tied to the hide by the atom and is thus animated by those spiritual energies along with the fetch when fully integrated and known to the individual. And the firth within the hide is also part of our spiritual bodies and is what we use knowing how to travel other worlds of consciousness in connection to the like being here in Midgard. And without the like, which again is the physical body, the firth would have no means to interact with the physical world or be able to integrate physical sensations into the hidge and the mind, which again are the mental and emotional bodies. And so with this, the like senses the sights, sounds, tastes, textures, smells, motion, pressures, pleasures, and pain of the outside and inner world. Going deeper, also on a multidimensional level for those that have experienced activations with the Hide, Firth, Atham, and Fetch, which are all there to awaken the woad within the like, and translates the experience and information that the Firth uses to then interact in the world here in Midgard, so that the mind and the Hidge can start to come back into alignment with everything that is going on and happening again on a multidimensional level. And in describing the strength of the physical body to spirit, to soul code essence, it can be looked upon with the complex as it interacts with the world. A person might describe the physical reality as some kind of an illusion or hologram. And see, with all of that, I'm actually here to refute that. And to say again that without being in physical reality, the complex being presented here is fragmented, scattered. See, now with the overlay and the distortions that we are dealing with, we actually need a physical vessel in order to heal through everything, making connection not only to the true core essence, but to that which is beyond all of the things that we are dealing with. And to focus on the idea that we are in some kind of prison here, subject to the powers that be, is a fucking lie. Again, what are we choosing now that we know the difference? And see, it's these ideas, as far as I'm concerned, which cuts us off from certain aspects of the complex that need to be mastered, let alone integrated. Physical reality is not an illusion. It's a part of everything. It is where we have traveled in order to truly ascend. For true ascension happens here. And upon awakening, coming into the position to become the master of not only your spiritual existence, but also your physical existence, that is how all of this happens. And again, this is not the pathwork of spiritual escapism like so much of the bullshit is out there. That's the pathwork of sheep and slaves. This is the pathwork of wolves and dragons. This is about spiritual self-mastery and coming into alignment with destiny here and making life good despite all the bullshit that I see so many of you still caught up in. Now, it's not to say that I'm not dealing with challenges in my own existence, because I am. But knowing the difference, you can step back and recalibrate. And as far as I'm concerned, any teaching out there that disempowers the individual, in any case, knowing what I know in context to how things actually work, those teachings are lies. And it's important to see them as lies. And it's more important to cultivate not only inner strength here in Midgard, but also physical strength with the like, and its capabilities which exert muscular force through physical exertion. Going deeper, the term for inner strength or spiritual strength of the individual here within the like is called the main. And again refers to the spiritual strength which can be called upon when necessary to aid the might and physical strength in times of need. This is more seen with warriors here in Midgard than it is with the average individual. But it has been seen and known that in times of duress or emergency, a person is able to summon the might of their main to perform feats otherwise not within their normal physical capacities. I know that I have indefinitely surprised myself and others in this life to my experience when it came to specific circumstances. And it's never to discount or discredit the inner strength that is there within you to overcome any challenge you are facing in life, even if it's to do with the physical body itself when it comes to things that need to be healed with it. For there is nothing that cannot be healed, and we are meant to heal. And taking it deeper in context to the main with an actual true story that's been documented, there was an incident when a mother saw her son trapped beneath a fallen car, and she literally summoned the might of her main and lifted the car up from the ground, pulling her son to freedom. You could look it up. And see, likewise, others in history have been said to overcome some pretty hideous, monstrous shit with the strength of several men, invested beasts and other things far beyond their physical prowess. This also takes place on a very real spiritual level in context to hyperdimensional warfare. And some have had to swim raging seas amidst torrential rains by summoning the might of their mane within the like. And see, listen, with this, the overall health of the like affects the Firth's ability to interact with the world. Otherwise, it could be blind to things that are going on in the unseen worlds. This can shorten the life of an individual considerably, not knowing the difference, and otherwise to the power that is there within the fulcrum when that inner strength, when the mane is activated from within the individual. Which is why all of this with the complex needs to be strengthened with the mane. That's the inner strength. So conversely, instability or weakness of the Firth can lead to physical ailments or weakness as well in the like, along with everything else, especially the mind, the hidge, and the woad. Now, the fetch rarely appears to an individual outside a dream state, save for the moments preceding physical death, or in the case of waking lucid visions, which I have experienced quite often myself, given over to my personal disposition. Tales indicate that the fetch can be sent away from the like to gather information and perform duties on a multidimensional level. This differs from the travel experience with the hide, in that the fetch is wholly separate from the Firth and is able to act of its own accord from within the individual. And when the fetch wanders in exploration, the body is not left in a dormant state as experienced when the hide leaves the physical body. It's also noted that the fetch can be driven away altogether if an individual grows sufficiently wicked in their deeds, cutting them off from their luck in life entirely, which I'm going to touch upon more here in a bit. It's to note here that within the like, that the fetch attaches to a child at 9 days of age within the womb. And interestingly enough, the spindle of the energy force in reflection to the fetch is the 9 when it comes to the art and science of numerology. And it's the same point at which the orlog, which again is the authentic path, attaches itself to the infant. Deep, deep within the heart core intelligence that is there within the womb of conception, which again is the microcosm of the primordial womb itself. And when it comes to an individual awakening to their orlog, this can vary between individuals in life. Otherwise, it's never actually tapped into, let alone fulfilled. And see, this is why we need to start tapping into the true hardcore intelligence, because it's there awaiting and will await to potentially be unearthed from within the individual. And in context of being in alignment with the true core essence, this is what needs to be nurtured and cultivated. But it must be known that it is there within you as the listener. And see, now a very important fact that needs to be noted here is that the fetch can be tied and bound to the collective unconscious and taken over from that place, if not cultivated otherwise, which keys people into the fourth veil of the lower astral grid works in denial of the core wound of humanity itself. And thus the fetch is manipulated from this place, having the spindle of the individual taken over with the overlay, which again is why we need to heal, to take back and claim what is ours in context to our eternal birthright. In this vein of thinking, the fetch serves as a connection to an inner guardian of the proper knowledge and wisdom of past generations as it pertains to the orlog of the individual, and ties between orlog and the like in action under the purview of the fetch and establishes a logical connection and allows one to see the fetch's role of not only connecting to the collective unconscious, moving through the fourth veil of the lower astral grid works in context to the core wound of humanity, but is meant to also heal through the core wounds that an individual carries from within themselves, which are keeping them from their true purpose, and is meant to ignite the flame of Orlog with the spindle of the energy force from within the individual. Next, I'm going to get into what's known as the Haminga. Now, the first thing I want to share, getting into this aspect of the complex, is to do with what's in the Haminga, which is called the luck. And yes, it's in context to how it sounds. And it's actually where we get the term from, taking it back to the original teaching. And it differs from the blind luck, often meant and thrown out there when someone says to you, hey, good luck. See, the modern sense of luck is not the same as what's there within the luck of the Haminga. And for most people, it's wholly out of the control of the individual because this knowledge is not well known. However, the luck within the Haminga, recognized by the ancients, held an entirely different meaning. The luck here in context refers back to the mane of the like, and refers to a person's storehouse of psychic energy and spiritual power. This is the access point of spiritual power within the individual, which the luck is built upon through the good deeds that we perform here in Midgard. It is very important to note with this, that one is born with a certain storehouse which is passed down through the Orlog, and this luck can either be good or ill, as it is usually a mix of both in life, also depending on the actions of the ancestors and what impact their deeds had on the Well of Weird. We are also working to heal, catching up the soul cycles. Once inherited, a person's actions throughout their lives builds upon or depletes the luck. And the luck can manifest itself in many ways. Again, this is to do with the psychic and spiritual energy and power of the individual within the Haminga, which determines the likelihood of success in any particular undertaking. And again, also manifests through the relationship and honor an individual has built with others they interact with as a result of their deeds here in Midgard. To greatly oversimplify the explanation, when a person illustrates to others that they are a person that can be trusted and is willing to do good things for others, is how an individual builds their luck and sees the results in a pragmatic, real-world sense. And a person who inherits strong luck will find that they are generally successful in life, even if there is pain and struggle while an individual is moving through the trials and hardship of initiation into their Orlog. Should they wisely utilize this luck, they will continue to build it and find that they are never far from a helping hand when it is needed, also being there for others when necessary. Now, taking it back to the Haminga itself, the sagas and old tales depict the Haminga in symbolism reminiscent of the imagery typically associated with the Valkyrie. And the Haminga was thought to follow specific prominent figures in a family lineage, carrying the luck of the family with them that the ancestors are waiting to reveal to the individual. And upon that individual's time, they would travel to the next venture in line, becoming one of the ancestors in alignment for future generations, as a worthy heir that received the luck of the ancestors who preceded them, and so to rise again and again and again when it comes time within the bloodline. Now this I feel I can relate to, since no one else in my immediate family knows the things that have been revealed to me, let alone what our name actually means. See, this is not a boast, because I've literally had to pay the fucking price of true shamanic initiation. And this duty seems to vary from that of the fetch, in that this is a specialized signature soul code frequency of consciousness that follows the prominent clan members of a certain bloodline within the Haminga, carrying a unique storehouse of luck representative of the clan for the worthy member to use if tapped into, who is trusted to cultivate the luck within the Haminga on a deeper level in their lifetime. Descriptions in the lore indicate that this process is not automatic, and it does not follow a specific strict bloodline, as in the case it does when it comes to shamanism. See, the luck is many things, and the Haminga is within everyone. In this case, though, the individual within the family must show that they are worthy to receive the honor, and will be tested, sometimes beyond what I can even say, and they must be willing to accept it, even if it activates on its own, as it did in my own case. And similar to the fetch, the Haminga has another spindle within itself called the kin fetch. This is akin to the concept of soul groups, which are not limited to a specific bloodline, but gets into what I refer to as cosmic lineage. See, again, there are blood codes, and then there are soul codes in context here to the kin fetch, and the luck that is also there in context to cosmic ancestry. This is a specialized fetch within the Haminga, which is tied to a specific clan and takes many forms with certain individuals, which is also tied to the blood codes of all races and tribes. Some tales describe the luck of the kin fetch to take other physical forms, such as an heirloom passed down through the family, serving as a reminder of what is there within the blood. Not only that, but on a cosmic level, which is very, very rare in this world right now. But as things are being reinstated, what are we going to be passing on to the next generations? This is something that I would encourage all of you to consider when it comes to your life, because I definitely have with my own. And so to see how this resonates with you, it seems that with this concept, the most common form of an heirloom is that of a family sword, passed down through the lineage. The sword is a reminder of the strength of the tribe, and grants the inheritor of the sword significant strength and luck in life. Themes persist throughout stories of the ages, where in turn, the family sword is lost or broken, which must be found or forged again for the integrity of the luck of the family to return to its former position. And it is likely that other heirloom items could also carry the luck of the Haminga. See, with this can be looked upon on a deeper esoteric level in context to the occult, as with the Ace of Swords in the Tarot, Arthur's Excalibur in context to the Round Table of the Wisdom Councils. It is symbolism of the power of the energy force itself. This is also to do with Thor's hammer, as well as the Ankh of the combatants, and is the holy fucking grail when it comes to the true intellect and intelligence meant to be forged within the bloodline. See, even J.R.R. Tolkien understood this in Return of the King when he said, quote, "All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes a fire shall be woken. A light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken. The crownless again shall be king." And see this which Tolkien wrote here. I'll get into a little bit more of it to illustrate some history to his lore, which is a more common reference, again, to the tradition of my ancestors, as it is with all of our people. The sword that was forged during the First Age by the famed dwarven smith Telkar of Nogrod. In the Second Age, Narsil was an heirloom of the descendants of Elros, the first king of Numenor. Although nothing is said of Narsil during this period, it eventually came into the hands of Elendil, a distant descendant towards the close of the Second Age. Elendil carried Narsil in the Battle of Dagorlad, where it shone with the light of the sun and moon. But in the siege of Barad-dûr, Sauron killed him, and the sword broke into pieces under him as he fell, and its light was extinguished. Elendil's son, Isildur, took up the sword and used its shard to cut the One Ring from the hand of Sauron, which in turn destroyed Sauron for a time. And Isildur took the shards of Narsil with him after the siege. Shortly, though, before Isildur was killed in the second year of the Third Age in the disaster of the Gladden Fields, it was for the fact that he took Sauron's ring. After this incident, the shards were rescued by Otar, esquire of Isildur, which he then took to Rivendell, where Isildur's youngest son, Valandil, was fostered. But Elrond foretold that Narsil wouldn't be forged again until the One Ring was found and Sauron returned. The shards of Narsil were one of the heirlooms of the kings of Anor, and after the Northern Kingdom was destroyed, they remained an heirloom of the Rangers of the North, and it was not reforged until the War of the One Ring at the end of the Third Age came to pass. In Rivendell, it was renamed Andúril, meaning the sword that was broken is the sword reforged. And see, with all of this in context to what Tolkien wrote, this for me reminds me once again the healing and reforging process we are going through in order to remember how to wield the spindle of the energy force correctly. Again, sharpened not only with the Haminga itself, but the entire complex in alignment with the true core essence. And see, this, along with more material that I'm going to be presenting in the future, is leading up to the unveiling of the true universal tree of life, which is eventually going to be presented with Black Earth Productions, all going into 2019 and 2020 as we move forward into things going into 2025. This is part of the legacy that I am working to forge, not only for my son and my family, but for those to whom it's meant. This is also to do with students and initiates, and also those who are among the kinfetch. For we, with my blood, are the keepers of the sacred tree. Next, moving into the end of this dissertation now, there deep within the well of Urd, there within the true core essence of the individual is soul, which is the Orlog, along with another aspect of the complex in trajectory that bridges everything over into waking consciousness at the core aspect in alignment with the true self. This is what the Orlog is. And with the complex complete here now in trajectory, it will put one in alignment with the spindle of the energy force itself in reference to the single digit code. And see, all aspects of the psychosomatic northern soul complex are in alignment with that, and is that which would potentially shape all events that unfold in an individual's life, both for good and ill if left unchecked and pulled out of alignment, otherwise not known to the individual. And see, it's these aspects that I could agree are worthy of a tome themselves, because here is where we access our true magic in alignment, not given over to some disembodied entity or spirit or dark god that works to ride in on the consciousness of individuals that involve themselves in such rituals. And knowing what I know, it's something that I absolutely abhor, given over to the sacred proper knowledge and wisdom that has been revealed to me, and that I have also been entrusted with by the higher force itself, knowing that when that shit happens, that there's a trade-off of the true essence in place of this with individuals that are into that modality. instead of the outworking and the reintegration and self-mastery of one's own eternal spirit, which is accessed via the true core essence, which further pulls an individual into alignment with the true self and Orlog, which is also everything to do with being in alignment with cosmic law, in context to the universal laws of metaphysics and the eternal axioms. And is what the real great work is. Healing and true awakening into empowerment and co-creation. That is what this is all about. And as for the Orlog, in a poetic sense, it is the pattern of tapestry that flows forth from within the individual and starts to actually reveal itself before an individual's time comes to pass, if they are willing to listen and hear. I know this is how it's been for me, going through the trials and initiations that I've been through in my life. And I'm striving very hard to be in alignment with what I know, that continues to go deeper and deeper and deeper beyond anything that I've even presented in this segment. It's the Orlog which influences the weave of an individual's life, which again is everything to do with the spindle of the energy force itself, otherwise manipulated against the individual. The spindle of the energy force is not only there within the fetch and the haminga, but also there within the true core essence, soul Orlog, and the true self. Each person is the sum of their own individual experiences and deeds, whether conscious or unconscious, in projection and reflection. But here, the Orlog again is the authentic path, the real path that we are meant to be on as individuals, not pulled to the left or to the right into all of these distractions and all of these things that would take us away from being in alignment with our destiny, which is deeply rooted within the soul desire, which can be accessed and known in part via the North Node when it comes to the art and science of astropsychology, showing you the direction of your North Star. And while working to overcome the great many fears that do arise when going the direction of the North Star, it is here one can gauge the beginning stages of their Orlog when learning how to navigate the first spiral of creation, which in reference is the solar spiral itself. And is also built upon the foundation of what they have inherited from the ancestors within the blood code and soul code genetics, which are eventually meant to reach out and bridge back into the universal spiral of creation in context to the true universal tree of life, and thus bridging everything together with the solar and galactic spirals of creation. And once it is actually known, each person takes the Orlog they are given and weaves their own pattern with it. And all of the descendants of that individual or others that are potentially empowered by certain endeavors will potentially inherit the person's weird, who are meant to take it even further when the time comes. That is, if they themselves awaken to it from within in alignment with the true self and the Orlog that they are meant to unfold, in order to take things even further as it is eventually meant to. It's like I've said before, there's no arrival point here. We are going to continue to awaken. We are going to continue to evolve. We are going to continue to heal. We are going to continue to become stronger and continue pulling ourselves into alignment with that which is meant to unfold here in our reality field. Stepping away from the wheel of chaos, knowing the difference, teaching ourselves and one another and the next generations the true history, and working to create and unfold the things that we know. For the torch of eldership is now starting to be passed to my generation and the next. And I will continue to do what I can for myself and my inner circle, who is my family and my tribe. And for others that are also working to discover what their Orlog is. That is what initiation into the blue flame healing arts and occult science is all about, in learning how to discover that for yourself. To lay that foundation so that when more advanced teaching comes forth in the future, you're going to know how to navigate what I'm going to be presenting. And again, the Orlog consists of the weird and luck, which is passed to each individual. Events and influences that can lead to their very being and expression and potential creativity, as it has its effect and molds and shapes the events of the life of that which is woven. See, this is what being the cause point is all about. And this aspect of the complex, again, referring to soul, through the Orlog can potentially be highly unique to the individual. It can also intertwine with other individuals' Orlog in the case of the kinfetch when it comes to soul family and tribe, and even more on a very deep, profound level when it comes to divine partnership. Yet at the same time, each individual holds their unique position to what they do in the tribe. And when it comes to the weave of weird, following soul parts that are gathered herein due to the connection of the luck of an individual for the inherited nature of these aspects within themselves, and each soul part that is integrated, let alone reintegrated, as in the case of soul retrieval when it comes to the fragmentation of consciousness and true intelligence. This, of course, is more than a lot of things which are directly tied to the Orlog of the individual, while looking upon things that surface, which are not to be categorized as such, but happens in the process of the Orlog as it unfolds with the individual. Weird is the general web laid out and represents the unfoldment of our destiny. And it's also nothing that's going to be handed to us on a silver platter. It's work. It's hard work. Also mixed with the joy of knowing that you're in alignment, because there will be struggle and hardship along the path. And it's in these times we need to remind ourselves and one another to keep going and to not give up and to not give in to hopelessness and despair. For the Orlog will be in its threads upon the spindle if that happens. And there are layers and threads that need to be woven in order for things to come into alignment. And it's more to do with the attitude that one has towards themselves when the spindle of the energy force is being fucked with by forces that seek our demise. See, sometimes we get tangled up in life, and shit happens because we do in fact live in a world of multiplicity where people want what you have and are vindictive when it comes to their ulterior motives. And it's something that we all need to be aware of when we are on our Orlog. That is why honor and integrity are vital when coming into it. And for most, this is fucked with on a daily basis by those that have manipulated the human race to weave slavery under the systems of domination and control instead of what we are meant to be doing and creating. Now, all of this is going to be a massive undertaking where I'm thinking upon these things as I share this with you. But see, life is meant to be simple so that we have the room and means to do what we are here to do. This again goes back to the vision I had about the Norns weeping for what has been woven by the slave state of mind that most are still in the thralls of. So in order to unweave that shit, we must start to weave something else in its place, making this web of creation possible. And thus everything is interconnected in this way, making both Orlog and Weird essential to each other. See, this is everything to do with the first phases of initiation that one will come in to know thyself with the blue flame healing arts and occult science. And these concepts I'm presenting are part of what you are inheriting if you're hearing this, and stresses the importance of tribe and family, as well as one upholding to the integrity and accountability to the tribe. Again, this is not some hive mind concept where we allow chaos and domination and destruction with some sort of bullshit Stockholm syndrome when it comes to tribe. No. It's for the purpose of encouraging and empowering every member of the tribe to reach their potential in alignment, and having your existence being an example of how to overcome things that pull us away from our true core, and thus rip and tear the tribe to pieces. This is for the purpose to make the consequences of our actions and Orlogs more apparent when we are in alignment with integrity to truth itself. And in doing something which is undesirable to affect the rest of the tribe in a bad way. This is why. Because again, integrity and accountability are so important when it comes to the weaving of Orlog. And to make sure that the spindle thereof is not being manipulated by outside forces that seek to fuck with the integrity of what is. This is how it has to be. And I'm not fucking around whatsoever. Not in my life or in other people's lives either. So with this, as I mentioned at the beginning of the segment, there have been a lot of attacks and things that have set themselves in the face of what is meant. But this does not go too far from my own sight with what's been revealed. And the sword of my luck is sharp as fuck. which is going to leave plenty of room for flexibility in the case of exploring what we are passionate about. But these are the things that need to be cultivated and encouraged, not downplayed or discredited, which happens only in the case of something that would potentially cause extreme harm to the individual or the integrity of the tribe itself. I know for myself in context that I'm being held accountable and will hold myself accountable to my inner circle and my family and my tribe, who are those whom I trust to be accountable to. And see, the ancients understood that there are situational occurrences which call for certain actions if necessary. That may even be against the set virtue and behavioral ethics we strive to uphold in context to maintaining the peace. But as it's been said, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And sometimes certain situations can skew the perception of things, such as individuals taking unfavorable actions on behalf of themselves to violate the integrity you are working to build Orlog with, which in turn is filled with the likelihood that those you are loyal to in a similar way will defend you in the face of anything that would try to fuck with the integrity and what is working to be created here. And if called on to do so, I will go to fucking war for my own, as we all should if that's what it comes down to. And all of these things are very important to me, personally, in holding weave to courage, truth, honor, fidelity, discipline, hospitality, self-reliance, industriousness, and perseverance in all things as long as it depends on me. These are the things that I'm striving for in life to uphold as I continue to move forward, unfolding what I am meant to unfold with my Orlog, to which the things I presented on Black Earth Productions, including this segment, are all a part of. And coming into the place where, again, the new mythos is going to be created. So to wrap things up now, the psychosomatic Northern Soul Complex is quite amazing and goes far beyond any sort of dualistic views that permeate modern Western society. And as we continue to build upon the work of the ancestors, it is a question of what we are going to lay before the next generations, who find themselves in the thralls of ignorance, distracted, so that they could potentially know the ways of the ancients and how the wisdom that is there within the blood to soul coat essence, coming into alignment with the true core essence, taking things back to over 400,000 to 300,000 years into prehistory, bringing things back to the forefront again, into these present moments to be viewed and heard. See, the complex presented in this segment will grant those that are willing deeper insight into the function of our beingness therein. For it reveals the cause point for illness on all levels, let alone our healing into being truly empowered, moving forward into our growth and development. For again, disharmony in the complex can lead to a number of issues, which we are all still working through and working to overcome. Knowing the difference is key. And this is all meant to be a benefit for us to bear in mind and heart as we continue to forge our way in this modern world that still grows increasingly disjointed and disassociated from the realm of the occult in context to proper knowledge and wisdom. I want the heritage of what's unfolding to hold true to its true value and wealth. And I think we owe it to ourselves to learn from the insight the ancestors were able to calculate and cultivate as we are now moving things forward, while adding to the pattern with our own insights and understandings in a modern context to the complex itself, taking things back to the original in order to be in the position that we are meant to be in. So to create the new mythos. This is a fascinating mystery to explore, and hopefully I've been able to demystify it in my own way. For the workings of the psychosomatic Northern Soul Complex, with what has been presented here, is now made available to anyone with the desire to seek it out. And again, if you want to know how all of this works with you as an individual, then I'm going to encourage initiation into the Blue Flame Healing Arts and Occult Science. If anyone wants to get a hold of me for that or for anything else, send me an email via blackearthproductions@hotmail.com, and line things out with me. Also feel free to check out other segments that have been presented on Black Earth Productions. Go over to our website at blackearthproductions.com and check out our services page. And when you message me to line things out, we are going to continue to take steps forward, and more is going to be coming in the future. This is Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions. Be empowered, be encouraged.